In 1992, id Software published a game where the player takes control of an American soldier in the Second World War caught behind enemy lines. The player must shoot their way through halls of Nazi soldiers and make their escape. This game was called Wolfenstein 3D. Now, the influence this game had on the video game market goes without saying. Although it was labeled initially as a dungeon crawler when it first came out, it pioneered the first-person shooter genre and thus laid the groundwork for every game in that genre that came after it. And it shows. Wolfenstein 3D is alright, but in recent years its age really shows. The wall textures are all the same, the map layout is a maze by today's standards, and it overall just lacks substance. Then in 1993, it released Doom. Where Wolfenstein 3D started a genre, Doom popularized it. Calling Doom a national phenomenon doesn't even begin to describe its impact. Doom introduced a bunch of new things to the Wolfenstein 3D formula, like multiple floors in a level, different looking environments, and larger enemy and weapon variety. Because FPS games were still in their infancy, any game with a first-person perspective and gunplay was just labeled a Doom clone. Games like Blood, Heretic, even Star Wars had a Doom clone. The game is called Dark Forces, and there's a version of it on Steam. Hi Griffin. Thanks for watching my videos. Wolfenstein has been an ongoing franchise for a long time, but for one reason or another, the Doom franchise is overall more popular and well received. A lot of people in the gaming space are aware of the 2016 reboot of Doom, which is also called Doom. You know, Yahtzee Croshaw said something in one of his videos about how our naming conventions are going to confuse the hell out of future historians, and I have to agree. Anyway, most people know about Doom 16, but significantly less people know about the game that came 2 years before it, Wolfenstein: The New Order. Despite both being published by id, despite their music both being composed by Mick Gordon, the amount of people who talk about this game are much fewer than those who talk about Doom 16. And whether that's because of its overusage of the same enemies, or because the soundtrack isn't mixed as well as Doom 16's, even though both are absolute bangers, not many people talk about this game. So I will. And I'm going to tell you why it's one of my favorite games I've ever played. I got Wolfenstein: The New Order during a free period on the Epic Game Store about a year ago. And like most people who download games for free on Epic, I didn't touch it for a while. Anyway, after watching trailers and old reviews and watching it collect dust in my library for a week, I finally booted it up, and it was glorious. Let's start off with the story. In an alternate timeline in 1946, the Allies are losing to the Nazi war machine, and badly. As a final Hail Mary effort, Captain William Joseph Blaskovich, that's you, and a small group of other soldiers are tasked with scaling the fortress that is protecting General Death's Head, and assassinating him. They fail. BJ narrowly escapes the compound after choosing which of his fellow soldiers will be used as a lab rat for Death's Head, and takes a large piece of shrapnel to his head, causing him to become vegetated. He is rescued by a group of Polish Jews who own a mental institution, and is kept there to recover. After some Gestapo soldiers barge into the building and begin killing the patients, BJ unvegetabilizes himself through pure hatred. After killing the Gestapo and getting the doctor's daughter Anya to safety, BJ receives some incredibly bad news.
It's 1960.
1960?
Yes. You've stayed with us for 14 years. It's 1960.
I have to find a way to contact the U.S. military. I gotta find my unit, let them know I'm alive and ready for duty.
There's no more war.
It's over. No more military. No.
The war ain't over. Look at all these Nazis walking around.
They won.
It's over. The Nazis rule the world now. They are everywhere. Everywhere.
What about the U.S.?
The USA, they, what's the word? Poddacie.
Surrender.
He surrendered.
BJ has been a vegetable for the last 14 years, meaning in that time most of his comrades from the military are either dead or in jail. After questioning a Gestapo soldier tied up in the garage, you make your way to Berlin to free the resistance, and based on who you chose to sacrifice to Death's Head, you reunite with one of your old war buddies locked up in the Berlin prison. After that, the goal of the game is to find Death's Head and finish what you started. I'll admit it, the story ain't all that good, and more or less just feels like an excuse for characters to get from one set piece to another. Like there's a part where you capture a submarine carrying missiles, but to launch them you need to steal the codes from a military base on the moon, which is like hiding the key to your gun safe under your neighbor's doormat. Even though the story isn't great, the characters are. Dialogue is incredibly well written, and the voice acting is top tier. Every character feels like a real person who's been affected in some way by the Fourth Reich. Max Haas is mentally challenged and would no doubt have been executed in a death camp had the resistance not taken him in. Max's father figure, Klaus, was a Gestapo officer who defected after his newborn son was executed for being mentally challenged. If you choose to save Wyatt, you can also meet Jimi Hendrix, who is in the resistance because he's Jimi Hendrix. Unlike BJ, who confides in his American patriot persona to contrast the Nazi oppression, Jimmy has always been oppressed in some way, shape, or form. It's just now he is more so than ever.
None of that has anything to do with me. That's not the America I fought for.
Really? I was little. My mother wanted to take me to the picture show, but we had to go in through the fucking colored entrance. I wanted a hot dog and a lemonade, but the sign says we don't serve Negroes in this establishment.
Jimmy is my favorite character, and it's a shame that you can miss him if you say Fergus instead. Even BJ fits right in with this group. Even though he is Aryan, both his parents were Polish immigrants, and his mother was Jewish. He enlisted in the U.S. Army as soon as he could to get away from his abusive father. I'm getting ahead of myself. The point is, the characters are great, but how's the gameplay? The gameplay feels akin to most single-player titles. You go from point A to point B and kill anything that gets in your way. If you plan on conserving ammo, your best course of action is to stealth kill commanding officers, because if they see you, they can set off an alarm that will alert enemies to your position, as well as spawn more. However, that being said, this also rewards people who prefer going in loud, as doing so will always grant you more Nazis to kill. Gunplay in Wolfenstein The New Order is spectacular. Every gun feels chunky and so heavy that if you weren't a fridge with arms and legs, you'd be knocked on your ass from the recoil. Speaking of, you can dual-wield weapons at the cost of being unable to ADS, but the crosshair is pretty honest about where the bullets are going to travel. Weapons in this game are very diverse and range from futuristic Sturmgewehrs to direct energy weapons. The auto shotgun has two different shells, one that fires regular buckshot, and another that fires shrapnel that ricochets around until it hits an enemy. The ricochet ammo sounds very OP, like why would you use the buckshot rounds over this? But they are really only good for tight corridors and do less direct damage than regular buckshot. There's a direct energy rifle that can turn into a DMR, don't ask me how, and a grenade mod for the Sturmgewehr. The guns you use are based on wonder weapons, which were firearms that the Nazi regime designed in the hopes of using them to win the Second World War. The downside to these weapons was that they were incredibly big and heavy and completely impractical for any actual combat use. In this universe, the wonder weapons actually led the Nazis to victory. Ironically, because they found a secret cache of Jewish technology that is millennia ahead of anything that we have even today. People might dismiss this game because they think it paints Nazis as smart people with superior technology, but the entire reason they won in this universe isn't because they were smart, it's because Jewish people were smarter. Speaking of crimes against humanity, let's talk about the set pieces. The set pieces in this game are fairly diverse and paint a picture of a brutal industrial society focused on keeping the Fourth Reich alive and its ideologies enforced upon anything with a pulse. If it exists, it is because we allow it to, you can feel, unspoken in the level design. Even though the Nazis try to come off as intellectually and racially superior, the architecture is gray, flat, boring, and oppressive, and the interior design is equally hideous. The special Jewish design concrete is made in slave camps populated by Jews, homosexuals, and black people. One of the levels takes place in one of these slave camps because of an earlier reveal that someone has planted mold in the concrete, and you need to find who did. Wolfenstein The New Order is a fantastic game that was completely overshadowed by the release of Doom 16. This game absolutely deserves a remaster, and if you have the game but haven't played it yet, this is your calling card. If you have played the game, tell me what you thought about it in the comments. This game is one of my personal favorites, and I put this essay together because no one really talks about it anymore, and I figured if I wanted to see change, I should enact it myself. Anyway, that's all. If you were unable to get The New Order while it was free on Epic Games, it goes up for about $5 during Steam sales. That's about it. Thanks for watching.
I figure when I'm gone, I'll be silent, till the end of time, but this moment, right now, it's gonna be loud.